6v6 is here to play, and it's actually been here to play for quite some time. Maybe not in the way that you think. We don't have the Blizzard official 6v6 test just yet. But in the meantime, you can actually test a rendition of the Overwatch 6v6 mode right now. Not only balanced for 6v6, but also with automatic matchmaking to boot. This week, not only have I been grinding this game mode to get a better idea of exactly my thoughts on 6v6 moving forward, but also to interview the development team behind the 6v6 code and all the work that they put in. Today, we're going to be working with 4 lead members of the team, asking their thoughts on 6v6, their challenges with developing the code, and not just talking about 6v6, but also the challenges and the benefits of working within the workshop tool that Overwatch 2 provides. There's a lot of awesome information and insight about what development actually looks like from behind the curtain, and I encourage you to not only enjoy this interview, but also to try out their 6v6 gameplay experience, link in the description. So they're using the code 7HSKW. Today, we wanted to highlight the team behind it. It's a great workshop. It's a great game. It's been a lot of fun to play. I'll give my full thoughts on that, and like I said, within 2 weeks. But for me, this is less about is the code, my thoughts on the code, and more about highlighting people that have put a lot of time into trying and utilizing the workshop to test and experiment with new things. It's important to be an active participant, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Couple of really quick disclaimers that are really, really important. I am not outright endorsing 6v6, any version of it necessarily. You guys know my stance on 6v6. I think there's a lot of good things. I think there are some tough things. And I think it's really important that I'm not either for or against. This is almost an ethical journalism approach. I want to provide opportunities to test and learn and try. That's what we do things here. This is also really important. This is not them versus Blizzard. These guys are not, hating on Blizzard by any way, shape, or form. This is just learning and trying new things about the game, finding some things that work, finding some things that don't work. Really important that we have that disclaimer. We're all on the same team. We just want to make Overwatch better. They're like any teams. There's differing opinions even within the team. So this is not, they're not one voice necessarily. There's a lot of disagreement and people have different opinions within the same very team, like any successful team. It's not all in the same, it's not all a bunch of yes men to each other. So chat, please be respectful. Please be kind. All right, welcome. I appreciate you guys for the great 6v6 developer code interview here. Appreciate you guys all having you here. If you want to start off just to get things going here, do you guys want to go one at a time, give your name and your role within the team right now?
Start with Toastie. I guess I go first, right?
Sure.
Hey, I'm Toastie, the director of this game mode. The initial, person who started the project after Overwatch 1 emulator. We'll get into all of these details later, I promise. But I'm mostly the person who is in charge of this project, I guess you can say. I don't really have very many thoughts on that. I still do a lot of work as a developer myself, so it doesn't really feel like I'm really above anyone else. But
all right, so Toastie's lead. Toastie's lead. All right, great.
That.
All right, and then Ecksdee, do you want to fill us in on your role within the team?
Okay, so I basically oversee and maintain the code base for 6v6 adjustments. So all the clean code that people refer to, that's mostly my work.
Okay, great. So if there's any bugs, we know who to blame and yell at, right?
Yeah, sure.
So you get none of the credit and all the blame.
No, you can blame Toastie. He'll tank everything.
Probably me, actually. That's probably me.
Okay. Going clockwise, the guy with the phenomenal Oasis background here. Do you want to introduce yourself and your role within the team?
My name is Sulack. I've kind of snuck my way into the project without actually having to do any of the work, so I'm fully honest on that. I spent a lot of time actually testing out their game mode. I found them a long time ago on the forums, Toastie's little post, "Hey guys, I love 6v6, come join us." And I've been totally obsessed and basically running games every single week for months now. So I'm the guy that they get pissed at for messing around with the settings and doing weird changes and what. So anyways,
what are the settings there for?
Exactly.
Besides being messed with.
That's right. If it's there, it has to be tinkered and broken.
And also, I just want to literally add too. I've taken it upon myself to kind of, amplify these guys because I think the work they've done is so great. So even though I've kind of the community manager as the label, I'm more of just the guy who pushes them to get their stuff out there, and I do YouTube videos on it too, but I'm not gonna worry about that right now.
Sure.
Just to amplify again their work.
Yeah, of course. And then finally we get the one with the non-functioning face camera, but definitely the functioning microphone, right? LemonHead, introduce yourself and your role with the project.
All right. So I'm one of the devs. I don't know. It's kind of the least important. I don't really
Oh, Pshaw. Maybe we should have somebody
Not
else
true.
introduce LemonHead so that he doesn't have to
Sorry.
be falsely humble here.
One of the guys, you guys want to do it?
He's one of our specialists. He does a lot of
See? LemonHead, you liar.
tangent
We knew
projects.
you were valuable.
very
Yeah.
valuable. Like if there's
Okay.
something that we kind of know is going to take, oh, this is going to be a really long implementation. LemonHead usually likes to grind those out. He's good at that
Nice.
sort of thing.
Do you guys have anything that comes to mind, like a specific example here?
Yeah, he was the one who most recently rebuilt some of our support passive logic, so we could reintroduce the global passive to all the heroes. The one that just is like what, 10 HP per second for everybody.
Yeah.
Whatever we came up
Yes.
with, he was the one who worked on that most recently.
Nice. That's awesome. Okay, so the complete team is here. So we've summarized the roles of each of you individually, but I think that's something that was not immediately clear to me and may not be immediately clear for everybody in chat. And there's certainly some misinformation in here. Is what was the purpose of this project? How did this project actually start?
Okay.
You want to get into
I
the whole
guess-
history of it? 'Cause
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
I
open
guess
some
I can
broadening
start
questions. You guys
let's
go
start
back
with
and forth.
Ecksdee. There's a lot of
Yeah,
history to
I'll
this.
just go chronologically. So development of this game mode actually started a year back ago to a game mode that I started called Overwatch 1 Emulator. And at the time, Overwatch 2 was around a year old, and I just wanted to play Overwatch 1, but you couldn't find any good game modes that are 6v6. And the best ones I found were some game modes with just custom global sliders that just tries to approximate Overwatch 1,
Sure.
but doesn't actually do the job. So my goal with Overwatch 1 Emulator was to utilize the Overwatch Workshop to recreate Overwatch 1 as accurately as possible, including all the reworked abilities and heroes. So that game mode pretty much laid the foundation for today's 6v6 adjustments by being the first 6v6 game mode to implement custom health bars, role passive removal, hero ability reverts, and custom damage and more. I'm probably forgetting some, but although that project was it was decently successful, but it didn't really appeal to the wider like Overwatch 2 audience because it didn't have the Overwatch 2 heroes and the reworked Doomfist and Orisa, and it was kind of limited because of workshop visuals, and of course balancing was really off because Overwatch 1 patch was kind of not agreed to be the best balancing. So a lot of players actually requested for a version of the game mode with Overwatch 2 heroes and all the quality of life changes from Overwatch 2, and this is where Toastie comes in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if we just want to keep segueing that,
Yeah,
that's
let's do
why I was completely unaffiliated with Overwatch 1 emulator at this point. In fact, I had barely even heard of the game mode, but I myself was in the same sort of mentality where, man, I really want to play this 6v6 format again, and I couldn't find a way to do it. So I wasn't personally interested in, playing Overwatch 1 again. I wanted to see what 6v6 looked like with all the new Overwatch 2 stuff. Like he just mentioned, like people were wanting a patch that had that new content in it, right? And I actually forked his game mode, forked that exact code base, and used that for the basis of 6v6 adjustments because he did have the foundations laid for specific custom health pools or how do we rework some abilities to work more, make sense in 6v6 again. Like,
So
what's
when
the
you
best
say
example?
fork, just because I'm an idiot, you're saying you
Okay.
basically take the source code and then move it in the direction that you want it to be?
Exactly. It's taking a point in a code base's lifetime, and instead of just continuing to commit on the one it was originally made for, you just go in a different direction from there.
Right.
And
when
at,
did you
at
guys...
that point,
No, finish your thoughts, sorry.
okay. Actually, you know what? It's not important. It's
Sure.
just
Well, I mean, this
clarifying.
is pretty important here stuff. And so at what point did you guys realize that it was important enough to actually become a project? Like, was this something that was part of the Overwatch 1 emulator or moving into the 66 code? I mean, either one of you guys. At what point
think
was this a project?
It's mostly Toastie's movement, I would say. So as I said, Overwatch 1 Emulator was kind of niche because it only appealed to like the hardcore Overwatch 1 players.
Right.
But to get the word out, you need to appeal to the Overwatch 2 players and all the like the general audience. And I think 6v6 adjustment is just better for that in general.
Sure.
I would also like to add too, these guys actually started their projects very separately, and they were dedicated to those projects before they actually knew each other. There's a little bit of, I'll say, drama behind that, where I'm not going to go into the full story right now, but there was quite a bit of uncertainty between the two projects during the first, I guess, release of it.
Yeah, like 3 months. Yeah.
Exactly. And we can go into like that kind of stuff a little bit later. But eventually, just because we talked and got these two guys together and got them working on the same kind of, I guess, fork, that what was it, about 4 or 5 months ago that you guys finally decided like,
Right.
hey, let's go with it, but something along those lines. So yeah.
I don't
Because we kind of had this rivalry going on, but I realized that it's better to kind of consolidate the movement for 6v6. And in my opinion, I think 6v6 adjustment fits better because yeah.
Sure. So the compromise kind of allowed you both to be more than the sum of the parts in a way, to accomplish a lot more than you would have on your own. And at what point does LemonHead kind of come into here? And so like you as well, like at what point did you guys start to step in and fill a role within each of the communities?
Okay.
Yeah, I'll let Lemon speak
You
first.
you would know more than we do.
I just want to hear
yeah.
Lemon's
Okay.
mic.
So, is it good?
It's perfect, mate.
Okay. Cool. All right. So I went project a little bit like later, and actually no, I'm trying to think of the timeline.
Like, very,
You're
very
pretty
early
early.
on.
Yeah,
It was
Very early.
relatively early. I
It
was
doesn't
looking.
feel like it was that long ago because time's been flying by these past few
Yeah.
months.
Yeah. So
It was before Toastie and Ecksdee.
it's
kind of
before I
worked.
officially joined the team.
yeah, before that.
Okay.
Before that, Lemon like did a lot of
Yeah.
the he did like most of the work for 66.
Yeah,
I would
at
say.
that
Actually, I don't
point,
know.
yeah.
Toastie probably knows better than me.
Yeah, so I mean, one day I found this project, and then I like suggested like different bug fixes you can do, and then eventually I just became a proper developer of it.
Awesome. And then so like you joined in. Was this when the project became legitimate in terms of
No,
developing a
it was
community,
actually-
or is it even sooner?
Sorry, I had to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I came in pretty early on. Actually, I ran my own small Overwatch focused community. I have my Scrub Club Media YouTube channel, where like we tested custom games for years. Just a group of friends. We love playing custom games. We love 6v6. We love whatever. And I was hunting around on the Overwatch forums one day, and I see this little post saying, "Hey guys, I love 6v6. I've worked to put together a balance patch for it." And I was like, well, you know what? My community would love to play that, and they'd love to see it. And I jumped on that train, dragged them in, and it's kind of just been this since. So that's where, again, I'm more of like the media guy. I do a lot more playing with the code than actually like building things inside the code, which that's what I love doing. That's why I came in and joined these guys, and I'm glad they've been tolerant of me for that whole thing.
Yeah, of course. What is y'all's long-term vision for this goal? And I know this is, I think, maybe the most important. We know what got you started. We know which guys brought you together. But do you see, is there even a long-term vision for what you hope to get out of this project? Because it's grown. It obviously, like, it's a big deal nowadays. So what's the ultimate purpose here?
I think we're probably already there. I mean, we just spoke about how Ecksdee and I mainly just wanted the chance to play 66 again. And now that this project has gotten so much larger, and we've set up a Discord server with a system that lets you actually play in real time with other people randomly. I mean, that's kind of what we wanted, right? Now
So
we
it's like
have
a
a place
matchmaker.
we can go to actually just get a 66 game whenever we want.
That's
Like,
incredible.
that's the end game. We got what we wanted, basically.
So you just wanted a way to play old 6v6 or new 6v6 with a matchmaker without having to do all, because I don't know how many pug communities you guys have been in. I coached an Overwatch League for a while, and I remember when Overwatch 2 was in alpha, there was a real attempt at, Overwatch 1 competitive doesn't matter. Let's get a community thing going. And obviously there's a lot of motivation to play it, right? Flopped miserably. Lasted like 2 days, and pro players were just like, I'm just going to go queue ranked. It's brainless.
Exactly.
But you guys have that matchmaking built into the code, or built into the Discord, excuse me.
Yeah.
I think
Exactly what you were describing. The pug communities are really tough to maintain. And it was like, that was kind of our strategy for so long. We would set up weekly events, things to get people coming back for, make sure there was enough retention of it, and just hope, like, cross your fingers that, oh my gosh,
Right.
please, let's play some 6v6. Here's the time frame. Show up. Let's play.
Right.
And eventually, like, I guess we didn't really imagine that we would ever be transitioning to a matchmaking system, because obviously that requires a consistent player pool, right? But
Right.
I mean, it's like, glad we got there at this point.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I'm trying to remember what were all the stepping stones that got us to this point. And if I remember them specifically, I'll be sure to bring them up in conversation. But right
Yeah,
now,
of
I'm
course.
struggling to think
course.
about
No,
what exactly
it's
led
fine.
to this point.
I think the exciting thing here is that you used a tool that Overwatch created for this purpose and maybe evolved it to a level that, I mean, I'm probably speaking out of hand, but maybe this is the most evolved workshop code ever. Like, I know Seda has done some crazy stuff with an aim training and warming up, has really revolutionized the educational context. I mean, obviously I would know, right? Because I get to say, hey, you play Vaxta, play TXX, CXX, right? If you want to actually improve your 1v1 capability. And these have been amazing tools for the community. Obviously, there's also the Lover Watch and the IRL, 18 plus Mercy lobbies in the custom games as well. But I think you guys might have the cut for the most impactful, most interesting, especially with what you guys have done with the Matchmaker using the workshop code. And I think this is what the workshop was made for. It was exactly this kind of stuff. And it's obviously evolved to a whole nother level because you guys actually have patch notes. You guys do patches on your workshop game. And that's crazy. So how do you, when you first went live with this, when did you guys start patching? What was patched? And was it a real attempt to try and keep the game balanced like a normal game?
Are you talking about version 1? Like
Yeah,
the very
sure.
first iteration of this
Yeah,
code?
fill me in. How did it go?
Disaster, mostly. So like I said, it was a forked version of Overwatch 1 emulator, the very first patch. And I didn't want to make 6v6 Overwatch 1. I wanted to make Overwatch 2. And that actually kind of revolved around only taking some snippets of that original code and leaving a lot on the cutting room floor because I don't want Orisa Barrier, I don't want DPS Doomfist, all these other things. But at that time, that was me first learning the workshop. I had no prior experience to using it. And so the very first versions that we encountered would have very, I guess, interesting edge cases where some variable was not being stored right, but it's also a variable that's in an array that's being used for player HP. So if you did something in a specific order, accidentally, you're somber with 800 HP now. So like there was some very weird bugs in those first versions because it was basically just like cut and paste scrapped together.
Right. Okay. And then in terms of like making these patch iterations, what's like, are you trying to just create a balanced game mode? Were there any outliers that you had to deal with pretty quickly once the game mode actually went live?
Yeah, for sure. As far as the goals of our patches, I think we kind of gave up on trying to do perfect balance because, to be blunt, the workshop doesn't give you the tools to do what we would need for that. Like, there's a lot you can't actually do with the workshop that we would definitely want to be changing if we were to make it perfectly balanced. Oh, there's a ton. Like, you can't do anything about weapon spread. You can't do anything about certain status effects that are not hooked into the workshop, like anti-nade or intangibility from Suzu. Fall off damage is a nightmare to work with. Passives cannot be actually toggled. You have to find scripts that work around the passives that have been added to the game. Like, that would be so simple, right? Damage passive on off, that doesn't exist. You have to manually set a character's healing received when they get damaged by a damage hero. So, I mean, you can go on with that sort of thing. And I wish I had further examples on that. Oh, the big one. Some of the stuff in the workshop that you would expect to work just doesn't anymore. Like, it's deprecated content.
Right.
One of the biggest things we use to make sure heroes work properly and have their abilities do different things is a condition called event ability. So when you do something specific on a certain hero with a specific ability, we can run a script. And that's how most of it's built. But a lot of Overwatch 2 heroes, that script just doesn't work. It's the same script, but it just doesn't work.
Okay, interesting. So I guess question for kind of all of you here is because we talk about what kind of limitations you have with the Matchmaker or with the workshop. And so when you guys are trying to make an iteration of the patch, in which you've done several, there's a lot of balance changes. You even have the format. I'll link it maybe later in chat. It looks like Blizzard patch notes, like all the changes for each character for the 66. How did you guys come about those changes? Like maybe something that some of the other guys can kind of chime in here. How did you come to, I'm sure there was a lot of debate and disagreement. That's part of what makes a team function, right? Is not being an echo chamber. How did you guys come with the solutions with the balance changes that you did do?
Someone else want to speak on this one?
Yeah, I'll speak a little bit to it, but I still want Toastie to talk about this because in the end, really, Toastie is like the lead and he's the decision maker. We have a lot of opinions on what should be changed, and there's a lot of times where Toastie's like, "No, I'm not changing that." But to point on specifically with like what we can change with balance and kind of bring what Toastie talked about with the workshop over, a lot of the times the things that we would love to do and like just small changes to certain heroes, we actually can't. So a good, I'd say, I don't know, Toastie, what do you think? 50% of the balance changes are just compromise, right? Is that, or maybe that's a little bit more of a...
It's highballed, but it might actually be accurate, to be honest.
Yeah. So, and And like a lot of it too, we actually did pull over, and again, mostly I'm talking for Toastie, so you can speak up on this. We pulled over from Ecksdee's kind of core function within the Overwatch 1 emulator, looking at a little bit how those things work and how they interact with each other. For example, like the Zarya bubble. You may go like, oh, you would like to, we would like, or they're only doing Zarya bubble because it's nostalgia. Well, not really, right? We find it actually works. Just it's a lot more fluid. It feels a lot more fluid for both the user and the people receiving it, the people on the other end of it. That again, there are some small things like how the bubble works that we would like to be able to tweak, but we can't. So we kind of just settle back on the things that that have been tested already,
Sure.
of course, within the Overwatch 1 emulator, and in again, not speaking for Toastie, but what feels really good in the
Right,
mode.
right. That makes sense. That makes sense to me. Now, one of the interesting things that stood out to me pretty much immediately was obviously everyone's talking about the 66, but you guys did more than that. Your vision for this game, and I want to know how we got to this here and what your goal is. You also went pre-season 9. Everyone's got the smaller HP pools. Obviously, the hitbox is a disaster. I think that was one of those numbers that you can't quite tweak exactly to how you'd like. But ignoring the hitbox changes, what was your vision for going back to the original health pools for those squishy characters, and why is that? Because your vision for the game saw that as the post-season 9 being more of a bad thing and reverting as more of a good thing. What about it made you feel like that was the direction you guys wanted to go?
That was a tough question, actually. I don't think I had any particular reason. I just think it feels really good whenever you can kill things.
Sure.
Like if you're on an
that's a
angle
great
as
reason,
any
right?
flanker
Stuff
and
dies.
you just want to hit the back line, right? If the more HP anything has in the game, the longer window of time a support has to peel for what you're doing. And
Sure.
if that window is too large, and what we found was, yes, 250 HP on every squishy was too large, then it just feels like you can't really do anything because the enemy team has enough time to respond to whatever you want to do. That's
Right.
just the simple fact of it. Especially in 6v6, when the expectation is that that extra tank on the field is going to gum up the works a little bit, make it harder to get to the back line to begin with, and sometimes just make it directly peel the back line. Having 250 HP heroes is like, how do you get through that? Ever.
Right. Right. That's true. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, XD.
If I can add, I
Yeah,
think it's
but
also just outside of balancing. It's just more convenient if you, because the game mode started before season 9, so it's more convenient if you just have the same state of the game even after season 9.
see.
Because
I was
then the
unaware of that.
breakpoints are the same and all the damage are the same.
That
So
makes
and
sense.
we know that players already enjoy the game mode before season 9. So I think we want to just keep that same experience.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So obviously you guys have been around for a long. I didn't even realize that you guys are doing it as long as you have. So what has the growth of the project been like? Because you guys have obviously done patches and iterations, but now you guys are like you kind of at the end game here. We have a consistent matchmaker. People are playing the game. People are talking about the game. We're almost about to reach the ceiling of what you could do with a workshop code, but obviously you didn't start at that point. What was the growth of not necessarily the work itself, but the community around the project? How did that look like?
Sulack, do you want to talk this one? Or do you want me to
I
go
can
for it?
take it. I can take it a little bit here, and then I'll pass it off to you to
Sure.
give kind of your questions on it. If you're curious about the growth, one of the at least my biggest objectives was to push it towards somewhere where it could kind of snowball, and then it would become somewhat impossible to stop. We've had large phases where like maybe there was like 100 something people in the Discord for a while. Everyone loved it, played it. We tested, refined. And then once we got it to a point where it was like reasonable, that's where I started to push a lot more videos out to try and bring in more people. And then we get a big influx of people. It would completely disrupt the meta just because of the way people play and the different skills that come in. And for a while it would be absolute chaos, and then of course it would settle down and we'd find a nice solid ground in terms of balance. Then everybody would be comfortable, someone would play it for weeks on end and then go hand it off to their other content creator, and then we get another big influx of people. And I think within I think our largest explosion was like a week. How many thousand people did we get, Toastie? It was pretty crazy.
I think I know what you're talking about, but
It was
it
Samito
was
and Guru
definitely
thing, yeah.
when Samito and Guru decided to run pugs on a stream. That was the big one. They
I
finally found
remember
it.
reading about
They
that,
finally
yeah.
got a code for 6v6 that they've been, I guess, asking for a while. And our server went from about, I think it was a little less than 1,500 users at that point And by the end of the week, we were over 4,000, maybe more.
Yeah.
Like it was over double.
Wow.
Now, I will add, this is really difficult from our end because, like, and more from these guys' end too, because they went from being like workshop developers to being like large Discord managers, which was
Oh yeah.
a
Yeah,
whole
overnight, I'm
other
like,
task.
I got to figure out overnight, how do I manage a Discord server that has twice as many people on it? And then it just keeps going from there.
Exactly. And so it's been like incremental things where it's like someone's like, oh yeah, do this to the Discord, it's really easy to do, but there's like 1,000 little things that need to be done, which just like it is very stressful, of course. From our perspective, having to deal with it. But I think it does kind of complete that, like, or it does at least feel that we hit that point where we are snowballing to the point where even if this project was completely abandoned, I imagine other people would love it so much that they'd pick it up and keep going with it. So, and it's not saying we're going to, there's no plans on that, and I'm not speaking for them either, right, on that. But it's been very, very surprising. But like, from my perspective, I'm like so excited for these guys. It's been the best thing ever to see something that I come in. I love the game. My goal is just to have fun. I'm a Diamond 5 player, okay? I hop in and out of Platinum here and there. But I play the game because I love the game. And when I found this code, I was like, everybody else has to play it. And the fact that everybody else is starting to get into it is just like, it's so satisfying. And I'm just proud of these guys. It's so great. It's such a cool project in general. So the growth has been amazing. But yeah,
I think the thing that's most fascinating for me is that you guys have like, you're apparently data collecting as well, and like learning from some of the data that you have. Trying. Okay, so talk to me about like the limitations of that process, and at least what was the end goal? Like, what are you trying to accomplish within the limitations of Workshop?
Okay, data collection sucks. I don't think we do, as far as I'm aware, I don't think we do any actual data collection. Like, the best we have is a feedback channel that we refer to when something is a hot topic, and we just
technically
it.
data. Ecksdee,
I mean,
if you could do anything with data collection, what would you be aiming for here?
Let's see. You'd probably try to like do some correlation, try to see like what kind of, I don't know, like what kind of skill actually, what kind of stat reflects player skills, etc.
Well, we just get really basic. I just want pick rates. I want win rates. I don't have that. I mean, like, seriously, we're working with nothing. You can't get a hook like that into the workshop at all.
Right.
So
Everything's like anecdotal. It's always someone like, oh my god, this hero's OP because I played it for one game.
Yeah. Makes sense. How do you incorporate matchmaking with the Discord? Kind of a side tangent here, but I haven't actually done it yet. I did more community pug things, but how does that work within the Discord?
I guess we got to temper your expectations a little bit because it's extremely limited. Like we said, you can't really hook into Overwatch very well.
Of course not.
Even the matchmaker can help you get a game that it thinks is balanced. That's all it'll do. It'll help put 12 people in a lobby, and that's it. It'll give you the direction on how to make a custom game, on how to join it, and then you got to tell it who won the game after that. But it can't do much else. So you still have to manually make the custom lobby. At least someone has to. You still have to manually find it, join it, get everything ready, manually make sure the teams are set up, and then you can play. And then after you're done, you still have to go back to the Discord and tell the bot, okay, this team won, and it will adjust your matchmaking rating accordingly. I really wish there was better integration we could do with this, but we're working with what we got, right?
Yeah, I mean,
quickly, sorry.
It feels impressive regardless.
Ecksdee, can you quickly speak on the idea that you had about like a bot that runs as an account?
So right now there's no way to interact with Overwatch through like outside scripts. So my thought was you make a kind of you make an empty Overwatch account and then you kind of control it using a script. So you move the mouse and then you move like your keyboard and then try to invite people that way.
Oh. Wow,
but I don't know if that's possible.
I don't know if that's even allowed, bro.
Yeah, I'm gonna say we're like TOS borderline stuff here, but that would be remarkably impressive. That would be remarkably impressive, though. So I guess like in that transition to like you now are going to an official matchmaking thing here, people are gonna want balance. People are gonna want a good game experience, and we talked a little bit about already the health pool changes, incorporating Overwatch 2 characters and reworks, not bringing in Orisa shields. But were there any major outliers or any significant hero changes that you wanted to incorporate into this code? Because when I looked at the patch notes, it wasn't just bring health down, bring health down. There were a couple very specific targeted changes. Were any of those calculated, and are there any specific ones that you feel like were important within the 66 format?
Do you want to hear more about which ones we knew were going to be a problem and addressed
Yes,
before?
yes.
Or would you like to hear more about ones that we were blindsided by?
Yes.
Or both? Here,
Yes
I
and
guess
yes, please.
we can start with the starting ones, right? The very first ones we knew were going to be issues. The biggest one that comes to mind is definitely Moga. Moga with the cardiac overdrive, giving his entire team damage reduction, is pretty annoying in 5v5, but is genuinely game breaking in 6v6. Because we all remember goats. Everyone loves to talk about goats, right? So what if it was goats comp on cooldown, right?
Yeah.
Just give your entire team crazy sustain by one button. That went very poorly if you try to implement that. So I actually worked on a script before we even had the game mode ready to play to make sure that went away. So we've got a solution that removes the damage reduction specifically on your allies when you shout. But while we expected some things like Maga to be a problem, we had no idea that a character like Tank Doomfist was going to just completely roll the mode. The first iterations of the game mode did have him nerfed a little bit, reined in, relatively speaking. But we didn't know how we kind of like overtuned him dramatically until some of the pro scrims had gotten their hands on the game mode. And they just could not swap off Doomfist. He was the best hero in the game by far. 2 to 3 times better than any other option. Had to get nerfed 12
Was it the
times.
AoE punch?
Most of it was AoE punch, yes. And the fact that you would just slam into a team of 6 people and build Meteor Strike in 3 seconds,
That's crazy.
It's just some crazy things we didn't think about, right? Because they made the AoE punch as a 5v5 thing. They gave Seismic Slam crazy range for 5v5 as well. And just you put all those new changes together, and all of a sudden you've got a character that does it all.
Okay, so that one was a blindside. So were there any in the damage or support category that were both either anticipated or blindsided?
I can do ones that are maybe weaker or ones that were way weaker than we thought too.
Of course.
So this is about the time, of course, when Sojourn was still being complained about, right? The most dominant DPS hero didn't do much of any of that in 6v6 for the longest time. It's just really easy to wall a Sojourn out if you mark her with an off tank. That simple. Whatever other tank you're doing can keep doing their thing, and that off tank does nothing but mark a Sojourn all game, and that's instantly put in check.
Interesting.
I mean, there were still people that could run a lobby on Sojourn if your off tank wouldn't do that, but the dynamic was there. It was much easier to get around that sort of counter, because once Sojourn had used Power Slide, for example, well, that's it. She has to stay on that angle for a little while. So especially Diva would make sure a good Sojourn could never play the game.
Yeah, I noticed that it's immediately all of a sudden off tanks are off tanks again, right? So Zarya, Diva, a lot of guys filling roles in there, and so. Anyone else? Anything else? Supports, DPS, or even tank?
Yeah, I can keep going. Kiriko ended up being probably one of the most non-engaging, unfun, underpowered supports ever. I've never seen a character go from this is really annoying and powerful in 5v5 to I think we should swap off Kiriko every game in 6v6. You only play Kiriko to build Kitsune Rush because
I tried it yesterday. It felt like even after some of the changes you guys have made, it felt like some of those off angles were really hard to get value out of. Felt like very easy to get marked, very quick. Didn't have as much of a dueling potential as much. Was that kind of y'all's experience as well?
Yeah, pretty much. You only have the opportunity to just play for Kitsune Rush, I think. It's really hard to get away with doing anything else because any other support can do that sort of position better. I mean, you'd only ever play Kiriko for that specific utility in the cleanse as well.
Sure. One thing I noticed as well is that sometimes when I teleport out as well, because there's one more body on the enemy team, teleporting out might not be to safety either. So I might end up teleporting from a DPS on an off angle to the off tank that's sitting on the other off angle, right? And so there's really not anywhere that's totally safe. Now, there's a lot of repeat offenders, and I'm going to sound a little bit like Samito here, but the Brigitte, AoE with Inspire, Baptiste with Regenerative Burst and Lamp, and so all the even Moira to an extent, the classic FBI's most wanted supports, right, back in 6v6. Did you guys make any tweaks to those characters going back into 6v6?
Heavy tweaks for sure, big ones. I mean, I don't know exactly how heavy-handed it was, but every character got some sort of. If they can do AoE healing, they got a nerf. Very simple. Like, Batiste has the right clicks, right? Whatever those
Yes.
the bionades that do
Yes.
some splash and a little bit of direct.
Yes.
We cut the splash in half, straight up.
Oh, wow.
Moved it back to direct. It's way weaker. Same with Brigitte. Inspire's healing has been cut by 20%. It's 12 per second instead of 15. And we gave a little bit back to repair pack instant for a little bit there. Like, there has been some really heavy AoE healing nerfs, and that was like a very targeted thing. We didn't want to go too heavy with it, because obviously you go too heavy and all of a sudden those aren't characters anymore. But yeah, AoE healing was like the first thing I knew I needed to tweak in supports, because that was definitely correct on saying that was causing a lot of 66 issues.
Yeah, and so when you make all these tweaks here, I know you guys don't have pick rates and win rate statistics, but based off of the eye check, what metas have you seen do relatively well? You guys talk about how Doomfist feels pretty good. My prediction would be probably incorporating Zarya Diva into the meta in the typical off-tank role in some way, shape, or form. What metas have you guys kind of seem to be slightly more favored at the higher ends? Any heroes, any support lineups, tank lineups, DPS heroes?
Can't tell, to be honest. Last time we had a definitive meta was a while ago, and we haven't. After we put a few patches out to address it, we haven't seen that specific meta since.
What meta was
Sulack,
that?
if you want, I think Sulack would talk more about that. He's probably had better chance to like spectate pro scrims and document it a little more than I have. What? Yeah, go ahead and tell us about some metas you might have seen, Sulack, if you've noticed anything. Besides like Maga Doomfist, if you want to go into that one specifically.
Oh, gosh,
Yeah.
that sounds offensive.
I was gonna say there are the Maga Doomfist kind of stuff was probably the biggest highlight. It's really hard from my perspective here too, because I found, especially with the amount of heroes that are now in the game, people try and go for more their comfort picks or the things that they're used to like find the easiest way to win the game. So even though like in some cases we may see heroes stand out and let's just say 4.4k player comes in and they're like a one trick of some sort, or they're like specialized in some specific field, or even they were really really good at those heroes back in Overwatch 1, we do see a heavy bias towards those types of picks. And so it's really hard to like, again, with the amount of tanks, especially because we're talking about tank combinations and you just do the math, the numbers of combinations that you possibly have. Often the meta surrounds one tank that might be overly tuned in one way, or like, or one other hero that might be a little bit too much. Again, we're going to just keep bringing up Doomfist because that was one of those ones that I think traumatized Toastie. Man, he probably lost sleep over that one. But like, it's really, really difficult. And then, of course, keep in mind, because I like peek into diamond here and there. As you start to go down the ranks, really quickly, characters that are completely useless at the really high ranks start to become really, really valuable. I've been fought against this a few times and mentioned it. I think Zen, as you get lower down the ranks, especially in the code, especially with the increased hitboxes and the lowered health pools, I'll just completely dominate a lobby as long as it's people kind of around my range, right? But as soon as you start to move out of that, I don't even know if we have enough games yet to specifically say like these combos are better than other combos or these metas are better than other ones. Mostly just not enough data. Really, that's it.
And mostly because if we do have that information, we know what to actually make a patch on next, right?
Right,
Yeah,
of course.
exactly.
It would get addressed for sure if we had a
course.
concrete answer.
Interesting. So I think to put things in perspective here, we talk about all of the work that you guys have done with the workshop and all the great things that the workshop has allowed you guys to do with the talent that you guys have and frankly the hard work, right? But we've also talked a lot about the limitations of the workshop and things that you wish that the workshop could do, but it doesn't do. And I think this is certainly still one of the more underutilized things that Overwatch provides. And I think that it could continue to evolve those things. So if you were to give me a top few things that you just desperately wish the workshop provided, I know it's going to be hard to prioritize those things. What really stands out to you?
Can we get
Why don't we all do
answers?
one? Yeah, let's all do
I
one.
was going to say, let's go around the room here.
Who wants to start? I've talked a lot
Ecksdee.
again, that's for sure.
Give us
Oh,
Ecksdee's
okay.
opinion.
I have a couple. I wrote some notes on this. So first is like a way to kind of tune every number in the game. So like including like all the damage stats, just like little splash radius or like spread range, anything number related should be like modifiable through workshop. That would be nice. And then second would be like just better support for Overwatch 2 heroes in general, because it kind of seems like the devs forgot to update the workshop for Overwatch 2. So a lot of the like Kiriko is like very hard to modify in workshop. So that's why there's like a lot of compromises that we have to make. And I'd say for me personally, it's like ability to revert heroes or like abilities to like an exact patch.
That would be
That
interesting.
would be nice.
That would be interesting.
Well,
Toasty?
that was what I was going to say for sure. Legacy content. If you rework something, please keep it in the game for the workshop. Like maybe some of us want to have access to Arissa's old barrier. I don't.
Scatter
personally,
arrow.
but like scatter arrow.
Everyone
Yeah,
wants
I
that.
mean, come on. Like surely these are things you can just toggle back on, right? The art is still there.
Wouldn't toggle scatter arrow back be like considered a war crime in some states, I believe?
Maybe, sure, but like,
But like, for like
it's
arcade.
there. Why not give them the option to? And I saw someone post about this a while ago. Some of the skins in development for Overwatch 2, like for Torbjorn, for example, level 3 turret has not been in the game for a while, but those skins have skins for level 3 turret in the code somewhere. It's there. It exists. But you can't use level 3 turret in Workshop or Armor Pack or any of those stuff, for example.
Interesting.
So,
Anything else come to mind, Toasty?
Might be Lemon.
let
He's,
Lemon say something.
I was just gonna say, like, you can actually see the level 3 turret in like highlight intros.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Oh
a good
my
point.
God.
Maybe that's what it's
Yeah.
all for. I mean, that's what it's all for. It's for that
Let's
one
model the
highlight
level
intro,
3
you know?
turret for the level. Oh my
The
god.
highlight intro, guys.
Just to make the highlighted show.
Priorities,
yeah.
man. Lemon, anyone's come to you in terms of like things that you wish the workshop did with the
All right,
testing
I'm,
you've done?
I'm not. I don't know. I'm not really sure about like adding like old like legacy stuff, but like one thing, like the new stuff needs to actually function.
Yeah.
Like we already went over like the tracking new heroes, but like the passives, the things that we have to do to account for it is just it's kind of ridiculous. Like and then another thing, echo duplicate. It
Oh my
doesn't.
god. Oh my
Oh, no.
god, no.
You see, it doesn't
Oh,
work. It does,
cry.
like you, like holy. All right.
Come on, you gotta leak the juice now. You've started the
Okay,
flow.
so
Like, come on, fill me in.
if you duplicate someone as Echo, none of the hero changes from the original character actually function. So you either need to like make a variable to track of both, which crashes your server,
Yeah.
or you like
If
gotta
you
make
wanna
separate rules.
If
which
you really want to
might
get
also...
technical about this, we can give you the whole history on like how we sort of made Echo Dupe work and how it works now and the compromises along the way. Like it's a lot to get into for one specific topic, but
Give me the Spark Notes version if you
Okay.
can. For this
Um,
Generation Z attention
Like, trying
span.
over it.
yeah,
Ecksdee.
go over it. The whole
Okay, basically, when you duplicate a hero, Workshop doesn't think that the Workshop still thinks you're playing Echo, so it doesn't activate any of the duplicated like hero rules. So if you have a specific rule for Reinhardt, then if you copy Reinhardt, it still thinks you're Echo, so it doesn't activate any of the Reinhardt specific code.
Mm.
And if you try to make it so that it activates both, then you put too much load on Workshop, so the game mode crashes.
Oh my gosh, that's unfortunate. So
Yeah.
how did you guys figure it out?
Well, okay. The last comment about you make it work too, it crashes. It adds to the server load for sure. But the main compromise is that, like what Lemon said, you just need to make a variable that's constantly checking or assigning itself to whatever hero you're currently as, not technically playing as, but like whatever you are duplicating to. And any rule that you want to make sure works for both Echo Duplicate and the hero specifically, you just need to make it check the variable, not what hero you're playing. And once upon a time, there was a point where this game mode ran exclusively on variable checks, so that every rule we had for all the workshop stuff worked with Echo Dupe. It was 100% consistent, and it crashed the game like a lot. It's just
It works so
completely
well,
blew
though.
it open. It worked
that-
really cool.
yeah,
I
and
was
that's all
like,
for-
man,
that's all
I
for
will figure it
LemonHead.
out one day. I will figure it out one day.
Surely.
So-
I need to. There's so much just random stuff that I want to get polished eventually, but it's so annoying because Workshop is really
it's on
bad.
the backlog, right? It's somewhere down there on the pipeline. The compromise that we
Eventually.
have right now is just most of them are hero restricted, but the most important ones, those ones are still using the variable. So
Makes sense.
ones that specifically track Reinhardt's double fire strike logic, the splitting the personal projected bubble Azaria, that one is done through the variable as well. Just the big ones, but you'll notice a few inconsistencies if you really pay attention.
Okay, makes sense. So, like, any come to your mind here?
To me, and this maybe it's more of a larger perspective. I've been running servers, like home-hosted servers, for like almost 20 years now. For games like Counter-Strike and for games like, I don't know, TF2. I have a big Minecraft server, all that kind of stuff. It's very weird to me that when these guys talk about like us having issues with server load, that we don't have any option to kind of get outside of the boundary of this completely invisible server that's on the back end right now. Even like, I don't even know why, just like charge us like $1 a month or something, like a realm for a Minecraft server, just to give us a little bit more power. Because there's a big argument among like home hosted Overwatch servers. I think it's reasonable, but it's not the conversation here. But just give us more options to actually see what like the physical hardware is doing that we're dealing with. Because there's so many restrictions that these guys have to just test. Does it crash? I don't know. We'll see the next game, right? We'll figure it out, right? And then we do it over and over again. And it's even terrifying in some cases when we give it to people that are, you know, like for example, Submito and Guru stuff, where we give it to them and they're like, oh, there's all these crashes and stuff like that. And we're like watching every single detail in the game.
The Doomfist M1.
Yeah, to figure out exactly when someone's putting an interaction on whatever little thing. And it's like, if we had the opportunity to buff the servers up in some way, then yeah.
The really insidious thing about that is you won't know there's a problem until you've wasted 12 people's time getting a lobby together because you can't test it yourself.
So
right?
you have to be investigators as well as coders as well.
And what's I've noticed a lot too, especially when it comes to the 4.4 plus games, those guys crash the servers and put way higher loads on the servers than any Diamond game will. Like
higher APM, maybe higher synchronization of like things happening simultaneously. Yeah.
And not crazy. Just a little bit more, but like a lot more. In my games, when I'm playing casually, when we had this, I want to keep in mind too, we've gotten past most of these performance issues. These guys are just, again, so good at it. We've bypassed a lot of it. But we would see it once every 4 or 5 games, this kind of slowdown.
Ouch.
But then we gave it to the 4.4s, and it was like, first fight, slow down. Second fight, slow down. Third fight, it's okay. Fourth fight, slow down. It's like, oh, jeez, okay. Well, we don't
sometimes it would just crash. When he's talking about slowdown specifically, by the way, there's a function in Workshop that lets you slow down the game speed. And what we do is if you can check the server load, and if it's going to crash, you just slow the game down to let it catch up. Yeah, that's like the anti-crash to let it sort of make sure it doesn't close the game out.
I've seen that in the Goats versus Goats codes before, which is constantly propping up.
Yeah.
So I no, keep going. Finish.
I was just gonna say we can't do a Goats code. Our stuff is too intense to handle it.
Wait,
you would just crash.
If we do a Goats code, then we don't need to work on the Echo code, so it could actually probably run better.
Oh, actually, got a point. That's a good point.
Actually,
I guess
a lot better. Look, if everything is on hero rules, then it actually runs a lot better.
Echo dupe is better than Grav Bomb, Shatter, Beat, Trance. I guess confirmed. Okay.
Because the thing about the player variable is that like if you put something on player variable, every time the player variable changes for anyone, it checks every single like rule that has it changed. So that's why it happened. Like that is like that's the thing that
Ouch.
It's not even what the rules actually do. It's just the fact it needs to check so many different things at once.
Right.
Sure. So one of the things that we talked about, I think yesterday, is just clarifying that this project was started because you guys just wanted to play 66 Overwatch. It wasn't that deep. You want to play old school Overwatch, it's nothing deep. But along the ways, you have, I'm sure, learned lessons about what things that you enjoy about Overwatch and what things a lot of other people enjoy about Overwatch. So if you had to give feedback to the developers of Overwatch currently right now, from what you guys have tested and learned, do you have any feedback? Have you learned anything that you feel like you'd wish to share? Maybe regardless of the workshop. Toastie?
Big one. We are kind of in the dark about what sort of patches and balance updates we need to make to our game mode. That is until we get it in the hands of people who grind and scrim it. And then we get the most valuable feedback we've ever seen for this game mode. We would have never known that Doomfist can run the lobby if you just know how to play him. We would have never known that... I'm struggling for another example. But like a lot of these things that we have no clue are going to be problems are actually huge issues if like 1 or 2 good people know how to optimize it and will just stump. So... I really encourage you, and I don't know how much of this is true right now, but you have to listen to your top ranked players. That has been the best resource I've ever had working on this, by far, not even close.
Do you find that
Their
it
input
trickles
is very
down
helpful.
to impact lower ranked player experience?
It definitely
as well?
does, but you can't just be blind to like, oh, I guess Reinhardt can get shot at. Let's make his barrier 3,000 HP. No, you
Right.
can't do that, obviously.
Right.
You have to be very cognizant of what you do change to make sure that those low-ranked players don't have their gameplay and experience impacted. And so that comes down to more specific hero changes, a very granular approach that you have to take to make sure you're not overlooking anything, and just basically making sure that, okay, we need to keep this skill ceiling in a healthy spot and
Yes.
accessible to many people as possible.
Makes sense. Anything else, guys? Some of the other developers here?
I'll
Ecksdee?
go off. So Ecksdee
Oh.
first, yeah.
Okay, I'll say bring back PTR because I don't know. It's just like we need more testers. I think every time there's a patch, something breaks in Overwatch 2, and I think that happens
Yeah.
more often than Overwatch 1 for whatever reason. So, yeah, bring back PTR.
Sure.
Do more testing.
So
For me, Lemon, do you have anything you want to say quick?
I mean, I guess like it's already mentioned, but like I know like every time like people talk about like updating the customs, like oh you gotta try for something else, but that's worth it. Just those update custom games to function properly, please. Like if there was like Echo Dupe alone being like an option to have it function would literally like fix any lag issues this game mode's ever had.
Okay.
Like serious, I cannot understate how much different it is. Just for that one thing to be fixed, but like also the passives, please. Let them
Passive
be
toggles.
let things be toggleable. That's all I want. And I guess another thing, I guess if anything, is like a lot of the custom game settings are based off of percentiles.
Oh,
But-
yeah. Wait,
but
that's a good point.
yeah.
yeah.
But like
Yeah.
but things that in the game aren't percentile. They're like just exact
Yeah.
numbers.
like decimal.
You
give us,
don't
like,
use
you
like it's probably just 'cause it's easier to add.
Can you give
But,
some
like,
example,
just-
Lemon, quick.
Oh, like every single thing, like damage you do, you can't set to a number. It's got to be like a percentage. So like to make it exact, you can't even do that in the actual custom games like settings. You got to use like some outside scripts to make it completely exact.
And mathematically perfect.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is yeah. Like the fact we have to do that to just get like an exact number on damage is kind of ridiculous. Like
For specific abilities, right? Like we're talking
like
about
if I know that probably be a lot of work, but like instead of percentiles, just do exact numbers because like
No,
that's
I know like an
how-
example. Example would be like
Please.
Reinhardt barrier. If you use the slider in game, you wouldn't get like 1600. You get like 15 like 96 or something because it rounds off.
Okay. I see. That makes sense. So like,
I guess to that end, also
Yeah,
just
no,
to
finish
touch
your
on
thought.
these two things is like, so every hero in our code has a different HP value than they do in live Overwatch. We have to use a specific workshop script to get there because the health percent scaler scales everything associated with that character's health, which would include their base health, their deployables health, how much overhealth they gain, and like maybe a few other things I'm missing. Like that health scaler is just tied to so many things, and you need to find specific workarounds to get any of the other stuff to work. For instance, we can't do anything reasonably well with overhealth, like at all. We can't really add it. We can only remove it because there's no actual way to add overhealth without also affecting every other source of that hero's health pool as well. Like if you're talking about Ramatra, that is a disaster to have to work with because Nemesis forms bonus armor and the shield he deploys are directly tied.
right. I didn't think about that. That's tough. So like,
Okay.
messages.
My last big thing is I wish that Blizzard would consider the social implications of their patches more than anything else. I think these guys put a lot of extra work into building stuff for the workshop, but they come in and they make these big sweeping changes without giving us any kind of legacy access to the work that was put into creating and maintaining these codes. We've seen a lot of workshop communities and a lot of different workshop codes just completely fall apart. And we can't just think of them as codes. We actually have to think of them as people that have put probably weeks, if not months, into building some kind of software structure to make something work. And there just doesn't seem to be any consideration to that effort. Of course, I have my own ideas about advice and stuff like that, but I'm pretty sure the devs at Blizzard would at least, they have ideas, that's for sure, but It doesn't feel like any of this is being considered. It's really frustrating from my end to see these guys struggle so much in keeping these codes up to date. I've had my own codes I've tried to keep up to date. I've talked with other developers that have tried to keep them up to date. And it's not just like, oh, my code's broken. It's like, oh my gosh, I have to spend the next week, during my nights, instead of sleeping the full 8 hours, I'm going to sleep 4 hours instead and try and reconstruct whatever the heck is going on here, because I have 200 users that want my game mode to continuously work. And I don't think that's really considered when they make these changes.
Yep.
So,
yeah, makes sense. Well, guys, I really appreciate your time. Any final thoughts or final words before we finish this interview off?
I'm good.
I just want to say to Blizzard, I guess, if anyone out there is watching, I really am very grateful that format changes, not even specifically 66, 5v5, any sort of format changes are still being considered. I don't know what the proper way to move forward is. I don't know if this is all just big yap and 5v5 roll queue is definitely the way to go. Doesn't matter. The fact that it's getting looked at is something I'm really grateful for.
Yeah.
I will add, not off the side, but I do want to thank Spilo and all the other content creators, even a lot of the smaller content creators. I don't want to start naming names now because I don't want to leave people out. There's probably hundreds of people involved with helping us push out this code and helping us. It's been really hard because it feels like looking at the 5v5 content creation, whenever 6v6 is brought up, there's a lot of anger that comes towards us and a lot of hate that comes towards us that doesn't feel like it actually addresses our concerns. And it's like, you guys just want to go back into the past and whatnot. So it is a little bit brave of Spilo to bring these kind of things up and push our code to the front. And again, we know also Samito's very vocal about it too, but all those other content creators that have kind of stuck their neck out in spite of all the kind of weird negative feedback that we've been getting to help us bring 6v6 to the people.
Yeah, and it was just wanted to play 6v6. And I think there's nothing. It doesn't need to be political. Doesn't need to be an us versus them. It's a test. It's using the tools that the Overwatch development has given, and even some of your feedback has been like, how can we use these tools better, right? And it doesn't have to be political. It just enjoy the game for what it is. Enjoy the game for the tools that it's provided, and then providing opportunities for other people to learn from it, and also to learn, right? Like as you said as well, to learn. Maybe if we were to give 6v6 another shot, what are some of the things that you guys have learned from the format that you guys are currently running that maybe the development team could utilize when testing things further? So that to me is, I think we're all just want to enjoy the game, and we all also appreciate that people have different tastes, and you guys should be applauded for the amount of quality work that you've put in, especially considering the limitations. So guys, I really appreciate your time. Shout out Discord, guys. I will link that in the description, !info. You guys have a website as well with some more information on what you do. And the Matchmaker as well. You got to give it a shot. You guys got to give it a shot. It's a lot of fun. And we'll be playing a little bit more of that today. So appreciate y'all. Chat, final shout out to these awesome developers. And you guys have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Thank you for having us,
All right,
Spilo.
GG. So
It's a great opportunity to be here.
Thank you guys all. Have a good one. Bye.